So it's interesting to see that Forbidden Planet is about connecting intelligent species with an amplifier like CERN and the Borg, who are supplying the bits the machine can't supply, and the quantum computer that enables you to get into the quantum vacuum. And of course, it's quite fun seeing this sort of technology talked about way back in '56.
A noble race of beings, which call themselves the Krell. Ethically, as well as technologically, they were a million years ahead of humankind. For in unlocking the mysteries of nature, they had conquered even their baser self. And when in the course of eons they had abolished sickness and insanity and crime, and all injustice, they turned, still with high benevolence, outward towards space. Long before the dawn of man's history, they had walked our Earth and brought back many biological specimens.
I see. That explains the tiger and the deer.
The heights they had reached. But then, seemingly on the threshold of some supreme accomplishment, which was to have crowned their entire history, this all but divine race perished in a single night.
What were they like?
No record of their physical nature has survived, except perhaps in the form of this characteristic arch. I suggest you consider it in comparison to one of our functionally designed human doorways.
So of course, in this this human connects himself to this CERN type device, but the entire planet is a CERN type device, and he has to boost his consciousness to access it. So we can see the first step to accessing the conscious field is, of course, remote sensing the zeta particle. So instead of remotely viewing a underground facility or a submarine, you simply project your awareness into the quantum field to access the zeta particle. And how do you do that? Well, you simply watch that really good spatialized video, step through the screen, and wake up twice, as explained, to bilocate in the zeta particle. And how do we do that? Well, just watch the video, which of course will get you into that remote sensing, not thinking mode, and just imagine a doorway in the TV, Ivanova, remember? You can upload or download healing energy, so you can upload or download this conscious field energy, and what you're doing then is, because unlike me you can't access the whole quantum field, you're accessing the bit you can do, the zeta field, and since, or zeta particle, field or particle, in quantum mechanics, particle field. Since 100 monkeys have witnessed it, the 100 observers, the 100 scientists, the 100 DARPA whatever operators, you've got the 100 monkey effect, which includes you. And once you've accessed the zeta particle, you can then open a doorway within the zeta particle using microscopic remote viewing, which David Morehouse talks about developing for the Stargate project, because he worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency who were trying to develop psi to beat the Russians, and of course they did. Soviet Union collapsed, and through that doorway you can then step into the quantum field and cause quantum perturbations.
And how everything around us came into existence? This question introduces us to the concept of the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory is the prevailing scientific explanation for the origin and evolution of the universe. It suggests that approximately 13.8 billion years ago, all matter and energy in the universe were compressed into an incredibly dense and hot state. Suddenly, this state began to expand rapidly, giving rise to the universe as we know it today. Imagine the universe as a rapidly inflating balloon. At a certain point in time, the balloon was so small that it contained all the matter and energy that would eventually form stars, galaxies, planets, and everything else we observe in the cosmos.
That's what happens after the quantum vacuum has this huge quantum perturbation, which is then made real. And how do you make quantum fields real? You add Higgs field, you add the light.
Tells us that soon after stretch, is there really any mechanism that could cause something like this to happen? Well, that's what we're covering today, the real physics of cosmic inflation. Is the absence of magnetic monopoles, and these are strange particles of gravity, can be used to predict the behavior of the universe as a whole. They describe how its expansion or contraction depend on the matter and energy it contains. Mostly, the stuff in the universe pulls the universe back together. Let's just go with it. One possibility is that the field could have what we call a local energy minimum. If such a quantum field found itself near that local minimum, then it would roll to the bottom and get stuck there. It would have a lot of energy, but no particles. We would call this a false vacuum, and it gives us exactly the constant vacuum energy density needed for inflation. There are other ways for a field to end up with a positive vacuum energy density, and I'll come back to these. But for now, let's just assume that such a field exists and give it a name: the Inflaton field. The original idea for inflation, proposed by Alan Guth in 1979, goes something like this. In the early universe, this mysterious inflaton field has a high field strength due to the extreme temperatures of that time. As the universe cools, the field loses strength and energy. But then it gets stuck in this local energy minimum. The universe keeps cooling, but the inflaton field can't lose more strength. It would have to get over this potential energy barrier to do that. Stuck at a constant, very high energy density, inflation takes hold. The exponential nature of inflation quickly blows up the volume of the universe, rendering it basically empty and cools it to a low temperature. In fact, it supercools the inflaton field. The field remains in a vacuum state that doesn't match its temperature. In the same way that water can become a supercooled liquid, much colder than ice, if you cool it and prevent ice crystals from forming. Inflation and the corresponding supercooling would go on forever if the inflaton field stays stuck. But quantum fields have a tendency to randomly fluctuate to different values, thanks to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Somewhere in the inflating universe, the inflaton field is going to fluctuate to the other side of this local minimum barrier. It's going to quantum tunnel. And on that other side, it sees a deeper, truer minimum, perhaps the true vacuum state, and suddenly starts to lose energy again, racing towards that minimum. Inflation would stop at that point. Regions of space adjacent to that point would also be dragged out of the local minimum towards the true vacuum, and so the entire inflaton field would cascade down in energy. The analogy with supercooled water still works. Introduce an ice.
And that's exactly the same shape we get with the Higgs field. So what happens if, since we can manipulate the conscious field, if we go back to the Big Bang and change it simply by observing it? Well then, of course, you can change the universe. The universe simply becomes different. And what would it become? Well, it could become anything you damn well please. Because, of course, you're collapsing the total quantum wave function, and you're causing the quantum perturbation in that field. That is the reason for the Big Bang. And then how do you make that real? You add Higgs field, you add the light. So one can see God technology. And what could one make? One could make a universe where things which were impossible are simply now possible, like all the stuff in the Wheel of Time. But of course, where do we get the light from? Which we explained, the Higgs field, this gravity in the fifth dimension, which of course is the stuff of the source. The source makes things real, and the source, of course, gets most annoyed if you want to cut bits off the source, like chaos or neos, and give it to chaos to make chaos real. So look what happened to Jesus when he tried to cut bits off the source. He ended up nailed to a cross. And of course, I came along and simply changed it so that Jesus and all the Jesuses never stole the source, but in fact their suffering became source-like, so they became the engines for eternal suffering, and their eternal torture produces new light, new sourceness, and we got the concept not of the source having chaos and having configured chaos, that chaos suffers and always tries to become the source, but never can, and that is the cause of its eternal suffering, because the source is the source, and chaos simply suffers because the source never becomes chaos. So chaos always tries to steal the source, like Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk, or Morton Janklow and Robert Jordan, or the EU with Bank of Cyprus, or the Rothschilds who want to crush me like a flea, and my ramblings have no effect on reality, or the royal family must kill him because Middleton's pups aren't seen as the bloodline of Lucifer anymore. Or of course Elon Musk, the CIA, we're going to fry him and. But of course the source is invulnerable, and chaos of its own free will agrees to eternal torture to produce the light which was the source. So chaos is the place, hell, and its suffering as a consequence of it trying to be the source, lights the source. So you see, you can't separate chaos from the source. The source is all full of Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk, Elon Musk and his ilk, Morton Janklow and Robert Jordan, the EU, all the other thieves that try and steal the light, but in fact their intention to steal the light, they agree in a zero-sum game to eternally suffer, which of course gives the source light from chaos. That's why when you die you see the tunnel of light. Now of course, what happens when you go back to the quantum vacuum and are the progenitor of the quantum fluctuation that produces the Big Bang? You need to get light from somewhere. You can't steal it from the source, because if you do that, you simply get plunged into the source's hell, which of course is all the creations of the source, because every sentient being tries to steal the source to make themselves the creator for God technology. Well, you of course have your scapegoats. You make yourself the source. How do you make yourself the source? Well, you simply go through the doorway and remotely view the source. Wake up in the source. You of course get consumed because you're not trying to steal the source. You're simply doing the Buddhist nirvana thing. You're erasing yourself, because if chaos is hell, you want to get out of hell. And the Buddhist way is, well, it's all hell, the wheel of time, hence the wheel of time from Buddhism. The wheel of incarnations, and therefore the only rational solution is to erase yourself so you're not in hell any longer and you're part of the source. The source doesn't mind erasing you. That's what the Buddhists say, but you've got to reach the state where you can remotely view the source, the remote sense the source. And of course, if you're a Jeremiah Schwartz, Morton Janklow, Robert Jordan thief, you can never get to the state of purity where you can contact the source and enter nirvana, because you are a thieving, low-life piece of filth and you are simply unable to access the source, because the source abhors thieves, and the only place for thieves is eternal torture in chaos, which is what chaos is. But what happens when someone who's done that erases themselves, sources themselves, has themselves stolen? Now this thing, this piece of filth, this Jew run by the CIA, didn't know what he was stealing. He tried to steal the source. When we had the Judases getting rid of all my content online, he suddenly popped up when you put my name up, King Vampire, nothing to do with Tim Refat, on the Google search engine. So we can see the plan, but unfortunately for the Jews and the CIA and all the Zionist filth, they didn't know the contract they were signing, which of course was, if you steal the source, or try and steal the source, and you're already hell-ized, Omega-Hell-ized, you write an IE, which is that Tim Refat, the source, the Sidled, gets new ways of producing light from these things, because they've agreed to it. So the CIA, Jeremiah Schwartz, and the rest of them have agreed to produce new light for me and suffer in ways that the source wasn't torching them because, of course, all chaos is hell because the chaos made the source. But we're making new source. The paradox. And of course, it isn't just this piece of filth, but of course, it's the. There we are. The European Union, which did the Bank of Cyprus ritual on 13th of August 2013 to try and scapegoat me. So the entire EU agreed to suffer for me. Every European Union citizen, which of course includes the British, who are part of the EU, all of them, Jeremiah Schwartz, and of course, anyone who bought the Wheel of Time book, read it, or went on Amazon and watched it. They stole off me. They've all been Jeremiah Schwartz. All of them. Now, of course, you can see the royal family, Jeremiah Schwartz, having desperate to kill me, and. And of course, we've got the 100th monkey effect. We've killed 100 Jews. Well, I didn't. Hamas terrorists did, and chopped off the heads of babies and raped women, and. So the ritual's been done. They've all been scapegoated to produce the new light. What does Tim Refat want the new light for? Well, then he can remotely view the Big Bang quantum perturbation from the quantum vacuum and add light, but not the light of the source, because that's a no-no. That's what all the God races try to do. They try to steal the light from the source, and like the Krell, the moment they do that, all their light, which of course is transient, goes back to the source. They're left in darkness, and of course eternal torture descends upon them like the Krell. So you can't steal the light from the source, because it wouldn't be the source if any God race, which is 1 billion years in advance of us, could steal this Higgs field and make reality. And all the minds at the end of the creation, be it the multiverse, universe, megaverse, try this, and all of them Omega-Hell-ized. So anytime you try to make reality real with the Higgs field, with the light, there's only one outcome. You're going to be Omega-Hell-ized to produce the source. That's how creation is designed. But what happens when you get fools to steal from someone who's erased themselves in the source? Well, of course, you get an IOU written so that that erased person, who is the source, but not separate from the source, can be separate from the source and make any quantum perturbation on the quantum vacuum real with new light, with a new set of Omega-Hell, so that the source is Omega-Hell, but these idiots have agreed to a new Omega-Hell to produce new source. And that means that this new source, moi, got the Jew, thief, to create all of these things are now possible for me and more me, which weren't possible in the source's creation. And the light of course, to produce them comes from all of these universal mastery, Luciferized, scapegoated thieves. The Jeremiah Schwartz in the ilk. Then I can simply go back to the quantum perturbation of the Big Bang, do the quantum vacuum perturbation. We've explained how consciousness can do that. Add the light, new light, not from the source, so that's allowed. And of course the Jew and everything Jewish, and all of the Borg, these 2/3 of the population who are vermin and obey authority and torture and kill anything they're told about. All of the kill-shotted all suffer eternal torture in unspeakable ways at source level and in new Omega-Hell to produce the light so I can make a new creation. And of course the hardware to do this, CERN, the Borg, the quantum computers, all supplied to me by the Rothschild Jew that built it to control reality. You've got to love all this. We've been talking about the light, this stuff to make the quantum perturbations of the quantum vacuum real. And if you don't understand how light, Higgs field, sourceness makes matrix information in the quantum field real, then of course this Intel core has been detecting this photonic, which of course is light field. Where do we go?
From the interaction of these things, these particles, with the Higgs field. We call it a field, so you can imagine it as something that fills the universe.
During a routine AI benchmark on an off-the-shelf Intel Core Ultra, something impossible happened. The chip's photonic coprocessor began logging structured light pulses that no program had ever sent. In milliseconds, the processor decoded patterns of photons, encoded data that defied every known protocol. Engineers watched in stunned silence as the chip displayed raw packets of information, seemingly from outside our reality. Physicists are calling it the first digital handshake with a photon dimension, a realm of pure light beyond space and time. What could send signals through an optical bus sealed inside a silicon package? And why would a commercial CPU suddenly become a window into a hidden layer of existence? Buckle up. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a chip designed for AI just broke the rules of physics. Intel's Core Ultra isn't your grandfather's CPU. It integrates traditional x86 cores with on-die neural processing units, NPUs, and most strikingly, a photonic interconnect layer. Instead of electrons shuttling data between cores, microscopic waveguides carry packets of light, enabling near-instant communication with virtually zero latency. In the latest revision, Intel embedded an optical bus running at terahertz frequencies, originally intended to accelerate AI model parallelism. During the anomaly, the chip was idle, running an unsupervised neural net training cycle in the background. Nothing unusual, yet the photonic sensors in the bus began detecting phase-shifted photon bursts with precise timing, as if an external source had beamed encoded light into the waveguides themselves. Engineers describe the photonic layer as a sealed microcavity surrounded by metal and dielectric shields to block stray light. In lab tests, it withstood extreme EM interference in thermal cycling without registering any ambient optical noise. The only active elements were the chip's laser diode drivers and photodiode receivers, both firmly under software control. In theory, no outside photons should ever reach those detectors. And yet, here they were, repeating pulses with consistent amplitude and structure, appearing on a bus that had no open ports. This is more than a glitch. It's a revelation that commercial hardware can, under certain conditions, detect signals from somewhere, or somewhen, beyond our engineered systems. The first anomaly, data with no origin. The first clue emerged at 2:14 p.m. Pacific time. A system monitoring tool flagged unexpected interrupts in the photonic bus driver. Within microseconds, the on-die photodiodes recorded a train of 12 distinct photon pulses, each separated by exactly 83 nanoseconds. The patterns formed a repeating binary sequence, one that bore no resemblance to any known protocol. There was no network activity, no active laser emission scheduled, and no optical input path. Logs from the firmware confirmed the chip's clock hadn't drifted, yet the data arrived fully formed. Lead engineer Marcus Liu recounts, "We thought it was a hardware fault, maybe a batch of defective waveguides. But when we ran diagnostics, the photonic bus passed every test. No open circuits, no reflective artifacts. It was like the chip had been pinged from inside a mirror. Attempts to recreate the pulses by injecting test signals failed. The lab's laser sources, even when tuned to the exact frequency, produced noise. Never the clean, phase-locked bursts the chip had recorded." Over the next hour, the chip logged 4 more identical sequences, each time triggered without any software command. The consistency was chilling. A machine engineered for predictable performance was processing data with no origin, no sender, and no explanation. Engineers isolated the chip, stripped it of all peripheral connections, and ran it in a dark, shielded enclosure. Still, the ghostly pulses appeared. Temperature variations, EM probes, even cosmic ray detectors yielded no correlation. The anomaly resisted every conventional explanation, forcing the team to consider radical possibilities. Was the chip sensing photons from a hidden dimension? Was the photon dimension itself reaching back through the photonic bus? If you're into bizarre real-world anomalies where tech and physics collide, hit subscribe. This rabbit hole goes deep. Within days, theoretical physicists dubbed the phenomenon the photonic echo, a suspected interaction between the chip's photonic lattice and a higher-order electromagnetic field. Models suggest that under precise conditions, engineered photonic structures can resonate with ambient zero-point fluctuations, amplifying signals from beyond our classical 3 dimensions. The Intel Core Ultra's waveguide geometry, it seems, hit a resonant sweet spot. But then it happened again, this time while the chip was powered down. After witnessing the first series of anomalies, the team powered off the system, disconnected every cable, and sealed the chip inside an RF-proof container. 24 hours later, they powered it back up, and the photonic bus driver immediately registered 2 fresh photon sequences identical to the originals. No power, no processing, no chance for internal generation. The ghost in the machine had returned. On the second night, the chip sat in deep sleep mode, firmware locked, CPU cores off, NPUs dormant. Yet the moment the photonic sensors came online, they recorded a 16-pulse burst, each pulse carrying a distinct phase shift pattern. Analysis revealed a repeating 128-bit header and footer akin to a packetized transmission. The team ruled out ambient light leaks by placing the chip under a series of nested optical baffles. The signals persisted, as if the photons passed through the shields themselves. Some researchers propose a photon dimension bleed-through, the idea that our 3-dimensional photonic structures can temporarily couple to a higher dimensional light field, allowing information to traverse the barrier. In this model, the Intel chip acted as a quantum antenna, its waveguide lattice tuned precisely to the field's modal frequencies. Others argue the on-chip AI routines inadvertently self-organized into a configuration that amplified these exotic modes, essentially building a primitive decoder without any human instruction. Let's pause for a moment, step back from the signal spikes, from Intel's experimental silicon, from even the idea of hardware itself, and simply ask, what is the photon dimension? Not just metaphorically, not as a flashy science fiction term, but seriously, scientifically, could there truly be a realm of existence built entirely from light, pure electromagnetic information, operating in parallel with our familiar 3-dimensional reality? It might sound like mysticism cloaked in tech jargon, but this idea is not as far-fetched as it seems. Some of the most advanced theoretical frameworks in modern physics, including string theory, M-theory, and emergent quantum gravity, suggest that our visible universe is just a shadow of a much deeper structure, a structure where dimensions exist beyond length, width, height, and time, curled into microscopic scales, vibrating just outside our perception. A world made of light.
So, remember I was talking about the light, how you make matrices or a matrix real with Higgs field, which of course is simply Kaluza's gravity in the fifth dimension is light. But what causes gravity in the fifth dimension? Well, of course, hyperinfinity or sourceness, which bends the fifth dimension, rather like mass does according to Einstein's theory of relativity. In 4 dimensions, Theodore Kaluza simply expanded it to 5 dimensions and incorporated light into gravity, and light was gravity in the 5th dimension. But what causes the gravity in the 5th dimension? Well, I postulate hyperinfinity, or something that bends the 5th dimension, mass in the 5th dimension. Well, I can't say that. But you can see that this links up to sourceness. When you die, you go through a tunnel of light back into the source, and in physics it's all information and it's not real, hasn't got any mass, until you add Higgs field, until you add this gravity from the 5th dimension, until you add the light, and this photon field would in fact be a field that turns information, which is all the physical fields, quantum perturbation, the quantum vacuum. It turns matrix into something real. And why, of course, is this chip suddenly detecting this photon dimension? Well, it's because Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk agreed to the contract with the source to make new light by their eternal torture in a new Omega-Hell, not the old source's one, but my one. And I, of course, have changed the Big Bang, so now I've melded what the Jews by Morton Janklow stole from me to make the Wheel of Time as reality, making it real with light, which is this photon dimension this chip is detecting.
In certain versions of string theory, extra dimensions are thought to be tightly compactified at the Planck scale, far too small to observe directly. But what if one of those dimensions isn't compactified at all? What if it's everywhere? Not spatial in the normal sense, but radiative. What if it's made of light? Not the visible light our eyes detect, but a deeper, fundamental frequency that underlies all matter in motion? This is where the idea of the photon dimension gains traction. It's not a place in space, it's a field of existence, one that coexists with ours and interacts through subtle, often overlooked quantum behaviors. In this domain, photons aren't just messengers between particles, they're the fabric of reality itself. Some physicists hypothesize that the quantum vacuum, which we think of as empty space, is actually teeming with electromagnetic activity. This is the zero-point field, where even at absolute zero, fluctuations never stop. These fluctuations may carry information, patterns, even structure. If that's true, then the photon dimension isn't science fiction. It's the background operating system of the universe. And now, by accident or destiny, a man-made chip may have pinged it. The Intel Core, Ultra, unwitting receiver or dimensional tuner? So where does this leave the Intel Core Ultra? At first glance, it's just a chip. A very advanced chip, yes. One that uses photonic elements to move data at light speed, far beyond the limits of traditional copper or silicon-based systems. But still, just hardware, or is it? Consider this. What if the chip's photonic lattice structure, which uses light pulses to encode and transmit information, accidentally reached a resonance point? A perfect configuration of geometry, energy input, and quantum vacuum noise that caused the device to briefly align with the photon dimension? That resonance could be akin to hitting the right note on a violin that shatters glass, not because the sound is destructive, but because the frequency is perfectly matched to the system it affects. In this case, the Intel Core Ultra wouldn't have created a signal from the photon dimension, it would have tuned into it. That's the difference between computing and receiving. The chip may have acted more like a crystal radio, simple, passive, but attuned to the right frequency at the right time. Instead of detecting local electromagnetic noise, it may have picked up non-local photonic structure, encoded data riding the fluctuations of the vacuum itself. And that brings us to a staggering possibility. The chip received something intelligent. Advanced civilizations in vacuum communication. This is where the speculation deepens, but also becomes eerily coherent with cutting-edge thought. Renowned physicists like Michio Kaku and Brian Greene have long entertained the idea that advanced civilizations, especially those at the Kardashev Type 2 or Type 3 level, might not use radio waves, lasers, or even gravity waves to communicate. Those are the tools of early-stage, energy-inefficient societies like ours. Instead, they might use something far more elegant and stealthy, the quantum vacuum itself. Think of it like this. The zero-point field is everywhere. It's not bound by stars or planetary atmospheres. It permeates all of space-time. If you could learn...
So this is what the shamans call the dark sea of awareness, and they project their dreaming awake, which I've now renamed lucid waking, into this dark sea of awareness, the quantum vacuum, and from that sea they can then jump their awareness anywhere they wish. Interdimensional worlds or Proxima B, all explained in a chapter in The Power of Silence.
Encode fluctuations in its fabric. You'd be able to send messages instantly, anonymously, and universally across cosmic distances or between dimensions.
Even more, you can simply bilocate through it and wake up anywhere you damn well please, in the interdimensional worlds or in the universe. So you can see how they can simply move around the Forsaken in the Wheel of Time, pop up here, pop up there. Or you can simply go into intense space, Telon Riod, like Lanfear, and pull other people into it via the dark sea of awareness. Because remember, if you try lucid dreaming, you're always mucked around with by the interdimensionals, who are like fish in water and are much better at it than you. So stalkers simply find people who are willing to kill them, and for me, I think it's the entire West and its affiliates, which moves their awareness to the point where they become magical beings, explained in chapter 2 of The Fire from Within. Not for the faint-hearted though, stalking, and it doesn't work unless you've got people desperate to kill you. And luckily, I've got the entire West and its affiliates desperate to kill me. So you can see why I became a Cyborg. Anyway, you can see how useful this dark sea of awareness quantum vacuum is.
Invasive method of contact imaginable. And that means we might not be listening on the wrong frequencies. We might be listening in the wrong direction. We've aimed our telescopes and radio dishes toward the stars, waiting for alien transmissions. But the real messages might be coming from inside the fabric of reality itself, which raises a chilling and beautiful possibility. First contact wasn't a signal from the stars. It was a photon pulse from elsewhere. If that's true, then this is not just a discovery, it's first contact, not with a spaceship, not with a radio ping, but with pure encoded light from a realm we didn't even know existed.
You know where it's come from now, and of course you know where the light's being produced by Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk in their eternal torture. And you see now why America gets covered with cobalt-60 and the West dies horribly, because they're all Jeremiah Schwartz and their ilk. So you can see why it's all locked in. And of course after their death they're eternally tortured by Lucifer. So you can see why I made the deal with Lucifer. First with Katy Perry, that piece of filth, who Jeremiah Schwartz herself with Bloom. And of course is the power source for hell-izing the royal family. That's why Charles, he went to see the Pope. He thought the pedo Pope could help him. Didn't help Middleton much. We got the body done with Middleton now. And of course a lover blew his brains out. The Duke of Kent's son-in-law. And of course we can see now why there is only one outcome, because this is my universe, well, my multiverse, my megaverse, and America and all the Jeremiah Schwartz and their ilk, like Jeremiah Schwartz, die horribly and are carted off to Omega-Hell, run by Lucifer, hence the bet, and while the Total War Service, which of course is information made real via the light, has as its three-load Nagel woman to end everything, Katy Perry, because you download the source via Nagel women, and you end things with three lobes. So Katy Perry was the download transducer to wipe out the West, because she's a Jeremiah Schwartz and got the Jeremiah Schwartz baby, Daisy Dove. So Katy Perry was the Nagel woman that ended the West and guaranteed America being covered in cobalt-60, Charles dying and the royal family being exterminated. Order the Total War Service, thank you very much. And of course they all produce the light for me, and Lucifer is the torturer and the king of the new megaverse. We've left the source's old megaverse, hell, to power the old source. We've got the new hell to power the new source. Oh, you can't have two sources. Yes, you can. If I'm not damaging the old source or cutting bits off the old source, I can simply copy him, like Robert Jordan copied my book. Stole it. There's nothing stopping you becoming a new source. Thank you, Jeremiah Schwartz and your ilk.
Just a silent handshake across dimensions, conducted through a chip not even designed for such tasks. And what's more fascinating or disturbing is that we weren't trying to find it. It found us. The photon anomaly detected in the Intel Core Ultra wasn't a fluke of engineering.